Welcome to this week's episode number 23 of the Camera Shake podcast, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything that's got anything to do with photography, videography, making photos, videos, and so on and so forth. So this is episode 23 already.
It is.
Yeah. It seems like we're surprised every week.
Yep.
that we haven't given up yet.
We're still doing it.
We're still doing it, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm pleased we're still doing it.
Yeah,
That's
it's 23 weeks since the beginning of the whole lockdown shebang, if you think about it that way. It's a good measurement. I thought about this yesterday because there's many things I thought about yesterday, but one of when you're listening to a podcast on the like Apple Podcast app, which if you're watching this on YouTube and and you want to have something really cool to listen to in the car, then you can listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, clearly, or on Spotify, and now also on Amazon
Music.
Yeah. Have you tried the Amazon app?
I have Prime Music app, and I did search through, and all the podcasts are there. I like the general format of it.
Yeah,
it's nice.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're already a Prime Music subscriber, and the benefit of it is it's cross-platform like Spotify, whereas Apple, you can only use that on your iPhones.
Although, funnily enough, I mean, over 55% of our listeners of the audio version are listening to it on Apple Podcast.
Yeah,
that is interesting. But nevertheless, I was listening to another podcast, and when you get to the end of a podcast, it'll then automatically switch to something else that you haven't finished listening to before, right?
Yeah,
randomly, and it switched back to episode 3 of the Camera Shake podcast, and it just seems like at some point in the distant past, I must have listened to that. Maybe I listened back to it, and I didn't listen to all of it, right? And so anyway, so it flipped back to that, and it flipped back to the bit where we're talking about how we were feeling about being stuck at home, sort of thing. And it's kind of that made me think, like, really, in a weird way, this is like chronicling, whatever the word is. It's it provides a really good chronicle of what's
well saved.
No, of what life was like during the whole coronavirus.
It's true.
Crisis of thing, on a week by week kind of basis. True. And so it's almost like it's almost diuretic.
Yeah.
Like a diary.
Yeah.
Is that diuretic? Is that the word?
Yeah, well, let's go with it.
Okay.
It's out there now.
Well, yeah.
I'm not editing that out. Yeah, I guess you can see us the rise and fall of our moods. And how depressed we are.
Well, yeah, it's one of these things. Especially because I have to hold a talk. Well, I don't have to, but I'm holding a talk on photography during lockdown in a week or two.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that'd be interesting.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. It just kind of made me think about all the different things that we've been doing to keep our creative juices going, over that time. Having said that, there's something very important we have to announce. We have to make a retraction. It's the first retraction on this show, I think, in 23 episodes. Anyway, but so last week we were talking about a photo shoot that we did where we shot a really souped up Ford. Well, it turns out to be a Ford Focus RS.
And you know what the funny thing is that we haven't, the edit isn't even finished on that.
No, it isn't.
No one's seen it. No, I don't even know.
No, exactly. Exactly. But if it is finished by before Thursday morning, then we will play it in now, and you can see it. You can see the finished photo right here. Okay. There's still something I have to finish. But yeah, in my head, it was a Ford Fiesta RS. But of course, it's a Ford Focus.
Ford Focus.
Yeah. Easy to get wrong. Yeah, I don't know.
But it looks the same to me.
Anyway, we have been we have been put on notice on Facebook, I think. So, yeah. So we're correcting that now for all of you Ford Focus RS owners. So it's a cool car, very cool car, no doubt about that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Very. I don't know. I guess you need to be a certain age to drive it.
What, like 17?
Yeah, like you wouldn't be getting insured on that, I assure you.
Ah.
Not at 17. It probably cost you $3,000.
Well, I mean, it's for those of us who drive hybrids, or electric vehicles.
Gary, it's the future.
Yeah, it is the future. It is. There's something to having a really powerful engine in a car.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Yeah.
I'm by no means a petrol head or a car nut or anything like that. But it's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very manly motor.
Oh yeah, that's
yeah. Especially, in reality, whenever I've been in a full focus, it's never felt very manly. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Or
was it Fiesta?
or Fiesta, right? Or any Ford for that matter. Yeah.
Well, there you go. It's Focus, not Fiesta. Focus.
In the distant past, I've driven 2 Fords in my history, in my past. They're both Ford Mondeos. I can't remember what I know, but I can't remember what the American equivalent is called. It's the same kind of model, but it's called something else in North America. I just can't remember. Anyway, the reason I bought it originally was because it was actually the exact same car that Mulder and Scully were driving in one of the early seasons of the X-Files. Yeah, yeah. Even at the same specs, it was rocking.
What a reason to buy a crap car.
Hey man, it was awesome.
Well, it did a job, I'm sure.
It was. I tell you what, the awesome thing about it was I'm such a lazy driver. This thing had the seats were like armchairs, right? It was super comfortable. They were super fluffy, super comfortable seats. It was automatic, and it was the laziest drive ever. You could drive that car. Had a huge. Actually, it did have a huge trunk though.
Mm-hmm.
I got a hold, and this makes no sense to anybody who's not a guitarist, so I apologize in advance. But I could get a 4x12 in the trunk, flat, just like that, no problem,
really?
With plenty of space for guitar hard cases and
really
pads. Yeah. I used to gig this car all the time. Yeah, it's huge. The trunk was humongous. Wow. Yeah, it's huge, and especially when you put and that was without putting the seats down, by the way. Yeah, if you put the seats. So back then, I used to buy cars. My measurement for the suitability of a car was I needed to get a guitar hard case in sideways into the trunk. If I could get, if the car was wide enough to get a case in, then it'd be cool.
On bought. Yeah.
So
that's a good shout.
So yeah, that wouldn't happen in a Ford Fiesta.
That's the reason I changed my car last year. It's because I was getting sick of having to put gear on my back seats all the time, all put them down, and now everything fits in my boot.
Yeah, because now you're driving like a station wagon.
The station,
that's true.
So Canadian.
Well, it's what is it called? An estate.
An estate car. Yeah.
So your car is pretty big.
Yeah. I enjoy that.
Not a hybrid though, but
No, it's not. No. Dirty diesel.
Next one.
Dirty diesel. Yeah. So what's been going on this week for you?
So I had too much time this weekend, and when I have too much time, it usually means I end up spending money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been stupidly toying with the idea after just having spent a ton of money on a new iMac and blah blah blah. I've been looking at. To cut a long story short, I the way I work now is I built myself a little kind of workstation at home, if you want, with the desk and shelves and whatever. And on my top shelf, I have all of my cameras lined up, and they're backlit, so it looks cool. There's old film cameras and all sorts of stuff. And one of them is my Fuji X100V, which I love. I've talked about it lots of times. I love that camera for lots of different reasons. But of course, Fuji brought out the X100V some months ago. I haven't, until now, for some reason, I haven't really played with the idea of upgrading the X100F.
You priced it up, didn't you?
I did, yeah. And so, and I kind of just thought, okay, so how much would I get for it if I sold it now? And then what was the difference between how much money would I have to lay down to basically upgrade to the X100V?
Mm-hmm.
And is it worth it, right? Because some of the improvements are incremental. Some of them are quite interesting. The lens, it's got a new lens. So for those of you who don't know, not Fuji fans, freaks, whatever, is that it's a fixed lens, fixed focal length camera, and the lens is actually, I'm really happy with it on the X100F. It's an incredible lens. It looks great. But there's been a bit of an upgrade on the X100V, on the latest model. And so I've been watching lots of videos. There's some really good channels about where we'll talk about the different ins and outs and compare it to the X100F. There's one particular channel. It's by a YouTuber called Booray Perry, a photographer called Booray Perry, which I enjoy that channel because I love that camera, and I've been watching the videos for quite some time, and it's been really useful and really helpful. And also there's been a lot of discussion about whether it's worth the upgrade or not, and so for some reason this weekend I ended up thinking about, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be nice? And so I'm balancing that with what are the benefits? How much is it going to cost me to upgrade? What are the benefits? What am I getting out of it? And am I using that camera enough to warrant the upgrade? Right. And that's kind of where I'm stuck. So, and so at the moment I'm like, well, I haven't been using it that much because we haven't been able to really go outside for most of the summer anyway. But what would I be able to do if I upgraded? And then like things like, the tilt screen, for example, on the X100V, very nice, a nice feature. It's definitely something I would be using. Video capabilities improved, like now has 4K video and all that kind of jazz. There's there are improvements across the board. Sensors better, the processor's better, blah blah blah. So there's some interesting things, and I've always said this. And although the X100F was never meant to be a video camera, it was never meant to be, but the video looks really good on that. I mean, we've said that in the past. Yeah. Whenever I've shot little bits and bobs on it. I think at one point we were even thinking about using it to shoot the podcast.
Yeah, we did.
Because the picture just looked that good.
There was a downside to it, though, and I can't remember what it was. Was it time limit?
Yeah, it's the time limit. I think it's 12 minutes or something on the X100F, and I can't remember whether they improved that on the 100V. But what I do know is that it now shoots in 4K, and on the X100F it was 1080.
1080. Yeah.
So, anyway, so this weekend I was just like umming and ahhing as to whether I should go down that rabbit hole, and it is a rabbit hole, and my bank, my wallet will come out a whole lot lighter if I go.
What would it approximately cost to upgrade if you were to sell your current?
I don't know. I mean, the X100V has been out for a few months now, so maybe there may be some, maybe able to get one secondhand even. I don't know at this point. And that I haven't looked into, but I'm thinking probably I can probably it's probably about 500 quid, maybe more than that, a little bit more than that. I don't know. It's just the question for me is just like whether the use of the thing warrants the outlay. That's just it.
Well, I think if I was you right now, I'd hold off just a little bit longer. Wait till we start to come out the backside of lockdown. Well, so you can get outside a little bit more and use it a bit more on day trips, and because that's where you're going to use it a lot, right? Yeah. I'm guessing primarily family related things that's going to come in because it's small.
Well, that's exactly the idea. Yeah,
and it saves taking your 750 out.
And I tell you, this is a really top example for that again, because I went to a country park over the weekend, with the dog and my daughter and my wife, and we met some friends. Of course, sticking strictly to the rule of 6 in the UK, you can only. I thought about this as well. There's another thing I thought about. Is the rule of 6. So you can meet 6 people. You're allowed to meet 6 people, but it can all be from different households.
Yeah.
So that's weird.
You may as well just say 6 households. The effect is the same.
Well, exactly right? Anyway, so I ain't a scientist, but this doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, so we met some friends and we're walking around. And I had my camera backpack with my Nikon and a 24-70 lens in there because I kind of thought, oh, cool opportunity, to take some pictures of the dog and blah blah. Did I take it out? Nope, not once. And it's typical. And I know that had I taken the Fuji, I would have been able to carry it in my coat pocket. Do you know what I mean? And I would have definitely come back with some photos. And that's exactly why I bought it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But there you go.
But you didn't.
But so exactly. So in any event, so that's my dilemma this week. And if you're in the same position as me, then let me know what you're thinking. And secondly, I can highly recommend Booray Perry's channel on YouTube. That might give you a little bit of maybe that might answer your questions, or it might confuse you even more. When you realize that it's not an easy decision anyway. So there you go. That was my weekend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it when you look up new gear.
Yeah. Camera dilemmas.
Yeah.
So how was your weekend?
Weekend was all right. Oh, I had a gig.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Wedding as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How many people?
30 people still.
Right. Okay.
So it was 48 hours before the drop to 15 people came into play. And it was all done in a really good way. We did our bit to, keep things as safe as possible. And it was great fun. It was odd. It was a really strange environment to be in.
Yeah.
Having so few people there, having to set up in such a, restricted kind of way, if you like.
Yeah.
But it was nice to get playing again. It's going to be the last gig. It's going to be the only one.
Yeah.
But they were happy to go ahead with fewer people, and so fine, we'll be there.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of petitions and stuff on government petitions in relation to the wedding industry, and wedding photography or event photography. Just recently, because obviously here in the UK, the limit has now dropped to 15 people, and I don't know. Does that include? Does that include the band, for example?
Right. So my understanding is, and this might be incorrect because I don't look into this. One of the other band members kind of deals with all of that, which is great. It helps me.
Watch out for retractions next week.
my understanding is that it was 30 people, and that included certain suppliers related to it. Not all of them, but certain ones. Now it's dropped to 15. It doesn't include suppliers.
Oh, okay. Right.
I believe. That might be incorrect.
So you're 15 guests in a 15-piece band.
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
So it's like, well, if that is accurate, what's the point in even changing it? Because you'll end up with 15 suppliers knocking about anyway. Of some description.
Get cousin Vinny in, he's the pizza boy. It's nonsense. Anyway,
but that was kind of my weekend. It was good fun, and now my back is hurting today. I have to say.
So what's the thing with singers? Because I know there was at one point there was a talk about, obviously there was the thinking was that you had to kind of shield as a singer or something,
right?
How does that? Was there any? Did you have to put up like a visor or any?
No, there's no requirement to do any of that. And I think when you've got so few people there, that actually you can easily maintain a distance from the crowd, with relative ease. So they were several meters away constantly.
It's a little bit frustrating, isn't it, when you play to a small audience like that? That's why I always find I've always found it more nerve-wracking to play in front of a smaller audience than it is to play in front of a crowd, because in a crowd it all merges into one big thing, really. But when you're in a small club or a small pub or in a small event like that, you can make out every single person.
Yeah.
It's a lot more nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And, even more so, you play better when there's more people there.
Oh, for sure.
The fewer people, the less fun it is for you as a musician. And if you're having fun, you just play better. And it's a better performance, it's a better show.
Yeah.
So that makes it hardest. But at the end of the day, you still got to be a pro about it, and you still, irrespective of how you might be feeling about it inside, you can't let that show on the outside. So you don't, and you always look like you're having fun. You still do exactly the same thing regardless. But yeah, I'm just glad to have done it. Oh yeah, we were all very happy by the end of the night. Oh, and we had to finish at 10 o'clock.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah, it all had to be done by 10. Or at least still didn't get home till midnight or after midnight. But yeah, it's good. It's going to be the last one. There's going to be no more on the cards now for the rest of the year. So we'll see.
Wow. Who would have thought that, hey, at the beginning of 2020?
I still find it difficult to think about, particularly when you think of it's one thing not gigging and doing something that you love and you enjoy. But then when you think of the financial aspect of it, that's, I can't even describe how much of a kick that's been to me.
Yeah. I mean, because you're like, with your band, you're gigging pretty much every Saturday. And I know you're like booked out for like a year in advance or something like that, more or less.
That's right. Yeah. Every Saturday. We normally do about, I guess, around 70 gigs a year, every Saturday. Yeah. Bar maybe one, which we take off so we can have a summer holiday kind of thing. Yeah. And then lots of Fridays as well, and then other Thursday nights come in as well on occasion, particularly around Christmas time for corporate parties and things like that. So yeah, it is busy. But so yeah, it's been. The odd thing is, you get used to getting your Saturdays back.
I was going to say that. Like, how easy is it going to be to get back into that? Eh?
But it felt right going back out on Saturday night. It felt normal again just by doing that, Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I didn't miss unloading my car, unloading the PA, dragging that upstairs, and don't miss that. Which is why my back's hurting.
Yeah. See, here's the thing, though. With this rule of 6 in the UK, I mean, if you're a 7-piece band, you can't really rehearse all together.
That's a good point. No,
you can't.
No, that's right.
So, because my band back in the day it was a 9-piece band.
Oh, wow.
8 or 9-piece band. Yeah, because we had 3 backing vocalists, percussionists, and a whole shebang. So
that's a lot.
Yeah. We used to what we used to do is we used to have 3 rehearsals. We had our own rehearsal studio, so we used to rehearse 3 times a week, sort of minimum, for the most part. And so we did 2 sectionals, if you want to call it that, and 1 full rehearsal. Because getting 9 people in one room was difficult even back then.
Yeah,
that was pre-Facebook.
Yeah,
So we used to do like a rhythm section rehearsal, and then we used to do like a vocal rehearsal. Because again, we had 4 singers in the band, and then a full rehearsal, sort of a thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's the other thing, when you gig that much, you don't need to rehearse.
Yeah, true.
You just don't. Not the material that you play. So you rehearse just to meet up and chat about things that are going on outside of the gig that day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And to put new material in.
Yeah. When we used to, my band at the time was an original band, so we used to write the material. So we'd have to write. So it basically, the vocal rehearsal, they would go through vocal parts and harmonies and stuff like that, and then write stuff. So we'd, sometimes we would just, in the rhythm section rehearsal, what would happen very often is like either we would work on something, like we would write, for instance, and then we would practice to a metronome or a click track, and lay down those things, and then and lock all of that down, and then so it was, there was a lot of writing involved in that. It was like a hardcore funk band, so there was a lot of tightness required on everything. So there's a lot of work went into that. A lot of click track stuff. But anyway, that seems like a long time ago. It was a long time ago. But anyway, so gig, that was good.
What else have I done? Oh, the other thing I was doing this, or started this weekend, was laying out some pre-production on this school shoot that they want to do in November, which is basically, with the way the rules are at the moment, they normally put on Christmas concerts and plays and nativities and all things like that, as you probably expect a school to do. They still want to be able to do that, but they can't in the current situation. So they've asked us to go and film and film that and produce that together so that they can give it to their parents. So I'm just trying to work out, based on what they want, how long things are going to take.
Yeah.
Our initial discussions on the phone suggested that it might be 2 to 3 days, which sounds reasonable when you look at what needs to be done. Actually, it's looking closer to 4 or 5 days. But that's what I'm trying to trim down and work out where we can save some time and all that kind of stuff. So I started on that. And then when I started to see where that was progressing, I thought, I might need to have a rethink about this and see if I can cut some time out somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, it's an important thing, though. I mean, I'm doing the same thing. We're doing another project, which is really sort of a, what do you call it? Bona fide kind of project sort of thing.
Okay.
Where we're doing it as a favor.
Yeah.
And so we're helping out a friend essentially with something that he's doing for his son. And but it's one of these projects where you actually really have to plan it from the beginning, because otherwise you can get, this can really take a lot of time otherwise. So I started thinking about how we can put that together so that it makes sense. The result's really cool. And it's not turning into like weeks and weeks of production.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And it's so easy to forget on the day shots that you need, which is why you need lists of what you need to get. And literally tick them off as you go, cross them off as they're done. And that's not to say that you have to be so rigid that that's all you're going to get. If something else springs to mind, or actually when you're in the situation, you think, that's not going to work, we need to change that, then change. You've got to be flexible. But if you don't plan it in advance.
Well, production scheduling is a really important thing. And that's why, any major production has some dude with a spreadsheet behind you. That's just how it is. And it's important because, especially once you get to the point where you've got a number of bodies on set, because you get to pay all of them. And, there are potentially location fees and higher fees for equipment and everything else. Yeah. So just by running, even if you're just running one day over, there's a cost attached that could potentially be, pretty high. Especially, of course, on big productions. If you're, if you're on location somewhere where you're talking about hotel fees on top of everything, and per diems and all the rest of it. So then, before you know it, it's, you think, oh, we're just running 6 hours behind. Well, 6 hours behind means the whole crew has to stay on for another day. Flights have to be changed, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden the cost it just skyrockets from that. So it's really important that everything is planned out really to the nth degree, beforehand. And I mean, of course, in saying that, I'm talking about like big productions, but actually the same thing is true for small productions, or even if you're just doing a photo shoot at home. I mean, I do that. I really do this. And we've talked about this before. Like even when I'm just making up some weird photo at home that I think might be fun, and it's just a great thing to work on. It's just me because I've got nothing else to do. I plan everything out and I sketch things out. And again, we've talked about this in the past, I believe, where it's just a really useful thing, even for a photograph, just to do a sketch. Keep it super simple, and you don't have to be great at drawing. I'm rubbish at drawing. But it's just a little sketch to sketch things out, because you can actually, from a sketch, you can learn a lot of things. Like you can even pre-estimate the focal length that you'd be using, right? Stuff like that, because of compression and all the rest of it. But it really gets you to focus and to think like, okay, how am I going to achieve this? You don't have to fuff around with different lenses, because you already know, I'm going to have to shoot this. This is like in foreground, it's really big. I'm going to have to shoot this pretty wide. So, we're talking 24 probably, blah, blah, blah. So you're making the right choices even before you get started, and it saves you a lot of time afterwards. And it very much informs a lot of decisions you have to make in editing. So, when it comes to combining different shots, or making composites, the placement of things that might inform how you light the set, and blah 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 blah. So you just, rather than experimenting your way through it, which of course you could do, but it'll just take a lot of time, you just by making a little sketch with a pencil and a napkin or something like that, that will really, it can potentially save you a lot of time afterwards. And I find that all the time. especially when I do these sort of situational portraits or something like that, is that, yeah, it's just a great time saver. And it's super simple. Anybody can do it. It's just that, again, it's just my experience. A lot of the time people dive into those little projects, and then they come up against obstacles and then either give up, or it just takes 10 times as long to get to the end of it, when the right amount of pre-planning would have just allowed you to avoid any of those things. You know, and with a lot of the things that we're doing at the moment, you know, where we're taking cars out to a certain location and we shoot them outside, you know, there is that. I mean, the thing is that needs that pre-planning, because not only are the cars not ours, obviously, you know, but also we're very dependent on the time of day because of lights and sunset and all the rest of it. That we have to be in a certain place at a certain time, so we're going to have to plan everything in advance. And we don't have, although we have access to these cars, we don't usually have access to them for very long. So it's, you know, it's one of these things. So plan your way out of trouble.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing, you know, just to tap onto the end of that, is that with these car shoots, you know, we're also trying out new things when we're doing these.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know, keep doing it to get better at doing this particular style of photo,
and faster.
So and faster, so that in the future, when we want to do more and more of these for other clients, that we're doing it quickly. That we know, okay, it just, in its simplest terms, it's a white car. It's shaped like this.
Exactly.
This is the time of day that it's being done at, and so on and so on and so on.
And these are the passes we need, and therefore
we don't have to mess around. We just do it, you know. And again, just to go back to what I was saying, it doesn't mean that on that shoot you aren't flexible enough to change what you want to do, but you know, these are the things that I need to get done.
Have a game plan is
exactly
the thing.
And you know, and this sort of thing doesn't get talked about enough, but you don't look stupid in front of the client. So,
that's the other thing.
You know, you look pro. You know.
Well, I mean, especially in this case, because the kind of cars we're talking about, of course, the client is ultimately there when we're shooting it, because nobody's going to leave us in charge of any car that's not a rusty banger, right? Well, so no, but yeah, so it's it's important to get it done. Exactly. And the other thing is, of course. And this is something that we've learned, I think, is that the more down to the point you are, the more on point you are in the actual shooting part of it, it'll save you a ton of time in the editing part.
Yeah.
And again, we mentioned this last week when we talked about this. You can take as many shots as you want. In editing, you really want to reduce it down to as few shots as possible in a way to get the desired result. And it's even that sorting task can take quite a long time. So you get to label all the shots and all. So the more efficient it is from the outset, the better. So
absolutely.
So that was the take home from last week's shoot.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
Talking about last week, I listened to last week's podcast.
You didn't?
No, I did. I quite, he's again. I'm the only that one view. No, I quite like my voice. Slightly nasal. That's good.
Oh God, that's right. Yeah, you were. Yeah, I forgot. That was over Zoom, wasn't it? You were ill.
And now you're ill.
Oh dear. Excuse me.
So yeah.
I'll tell you what. I think I am getting ill.
So let's talk about some of the things that were in the news this week.
I saw that more rumors have come out about Sony releasing a new camera in Q1 of next year.
Okay.
I don't use Sony. You don't use Sony. But I'm tempted.
Open to anything.
I am tempted. So it's apparently going to be called the A9. Okay. It's going to be essentially the same as the A7 III, I want to say. Okay. I think that's what it is. So the A7 is it's only a 12 megapixel sensor, which is fine, similar to the GH5S.
Yeah, the video version.
Or the GH5 actually, whichever way around it is, can never bloody remember. it's so 12 megapixel, 3-axis in-body stabilization, dual card slots, great autofocus, 4K it does up to 120 frames, but autofocus working at 120 frames, which my GH5 doesn't do. You have to be manual focus, so that's actually a big win right there. That's a nice addition. So that's the general basics of the A7. What this A9 is going to apparently be is the same as that, but it's going to be 50 megapixels rather than 12. Okay, which is great, much better for stills and whatnot. But it's going to be it's going to have 8K video as well, and apparently also the 4K. It will still be 120 up to 4K, and I think 60 8K.
Okay.
They're just the rumors that I've heard.
This is the R5 Killer.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Oh, sorry. Missing out the most important bit of information here. No time limit.
Of course not.
Because I won't buy a video camera if there's a time limit. It's not going to work for me. It doesn't work for me at all. No time limit. And these were used in quotes. Without overheating.
Was it in bold, underlined?
Yeah.
Was it?
So if that's accurate, that's a winner for me right there.
So the thing about the overheating thing is it'd be interesting to see how they actually make that happen.
Yeah.
Because one of the issues just generally with that is that these sensors run hot. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And you could get rid of the air, and the advantage of having sort of bigger bodied video cameras like Canon C series, for example, or whatever, is that there's more space, to have air vents and all the rest of it. And of course, in a smaller size mirrorless camera body, you just don't have the space to allow the air to circulate around like that. So it'd be interesting to see how they've actually made that happen.
It might be that it ends up being a noisy camera, potentially.
That'd be really shit for video.
Well, it would. But that said, I don't think I've ever. In fact, I have never used the onboard sound on my GH5S.
No, I mean
never.
Neither. But I have noticed that. Even if you have a shotgun mic on top of it, like a Video Mic Pro or something like that, that does pick up some stuff when it comes from the camera body. Like I know, for instance, good example is back in the olden days.
It's also quite rare that I do that, I have to say as well.
Well, I mean that's but if you're vlogging, for example, that's how you would typically do it. So I remember I used to have this, or maybe I still have it. I used to have this consumer body Nikon, like a 5300 or whatever it was, and I used that to shoot some video because it is just shoot 1080 video sort of thing. But especially the video autofocus on a Nikon is really loud. It's really loud, really noisy. And I remember slamming a Video Mic Pro on top, and then you could hear all of that kerfuffle going on. And of course, on that particular body, the video autofocus is terrible. Like really atrocious, like unusable, really. But nevertheless, you very clearly hear the the motor noise stuff. Unusable, really. So that'd be if it's a noisy body, then that could be annoying.
It could be. Yeah, I mean, I would never buy anything until it's been out for a little bit and it's been and that would mean a whole shift for me too, from Panasonic to Sony.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
For sure.
That's a huge deal. But if the specs of this camera are right, it is what I'm looking for at the moment.
See, it would be an even bigger deal if you were switching from Olympus to Sony.
Oh, good old Olympus.
Well,
we do love Olympus.
We love Olympus. Great segue to the first bit of news that I found. Actually, I found it last week, but I was too sick to talk about it last week.
Oh.
And it's an interesting report on how many DSLRs and mirrorless cameras the top brands have shipped in 2019. Now that the numbers are in, right?
Okay.
And And that revealed...
Now that the numbers are in 9 months later.
Well, I mean, for 2019, right? So, of course, I mean, 2020, it has to be said, things are slightly different in 2020 because I don't know how that could be in any way, shape, or form representative.
It can't, can it, I guess?
Because,
Yeah.
But so 2019, that's an interesting thing. So, I mean, get this. So, if we just look at the overall numbers for a second.
This is all cameras that they do.
This is like across. So, all cameras that have interchangeable lenses.
Okay.
So we're not talking about compact cameras or anything like that.
Yeah.
Or even mobile phone cameras or whatever. We're just talking about cameras with interchangeable lenses. And of course, they could be either DSLRs or they could be mirrorless cameras with interchangeable lenses. Thinking about the Fuji X100V wouldn't count into that either because it doesn't have an interchangeable lens.
In theory, yeah.
In theory. But anyway, so in 2019, in total, there were 8.66 million cameras were shipped with interchangeable lenses. Right?
Okay.
So that's just over 8.5 million many cameras across the board, all in, between all manufacturers, or between all manufacturers, I guess. So out of these 8.66 million cameras, Canon has the lion's share of 4.16, just over 4 million cameras. So that really establishes Canon, solidly as the biggest camera manufacturer out there. Now that's followed by Nikon shipping 1.73 million cameras. So even the difference between Canon and Nikon is remarkable, right?
That's well more than twice.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Yeah. So, but Nikon, and of course, you remember back in the day, Canon and Nikon were like the top two. There was Canon and Nikon, and there was nothing for a long while, and then there was Olympus. But Sony, of course, have gained a lot of ground, and Sony are now right behind Nikon with 1.66 million. So they've really, this is almost like you could say this is like a joint second place almost.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because
that's close.
Nikon have just barely managed to cling on to being the number two. And there were at one point, there were reports that Sony had actually overtaken Nikon. And that's really bad news for Nikon in general. Not only are they so far behind their main competitor, but they're now being almost overrun by a company that hasn't even been in the camera game for very long.
Yeah.
And you remember, Nikon's been in this game for a century, right? This is they are one of the big old brands. Everybody knows Nikon or Nikon, depending on where you live, right? And so that's that's a shocker. In the first place. But then in fourth place, you've got Fuji with 500,000 cameras shipped. So, again, that's the difference between Sony's 1.66 million and Fuji's 500,000. That's quite a large gap already.
That's huge.
And then in fifth place even, you've got Olympus with 330,000 cameras shipped, and then others, right? So, we've got Canon being the number one, followed by Nikon, and then with Sony hot on its heels, and then you've got Olympus and Fujifilm even, and then Olympus. So that's DSLRs and mirrorless cameras.
Okay.
But if you then look at only mirrorless cameras, that's where it gets really interesting. So as if it wasn't bad news enough for Nikon that Sony are so hot on their heels, it gets even worse when you look at mirrorless cameras on its own. Because out of the 8.66 million cameras in total, 3.94 million of those were actually mirrorless cameras. So just under half, right, of all interchangeable lens cameras sold were mirrorless. That is, on one hand, that's great, because it just really means, it really shows how far mirrorless technology has come.
Already,
yeah. That's already, we're talking about almost 50% of the marketplace there, or market share. And on the other hand, I'm kind of surprised that it's not more. Because I'm almost and of course I'm thinking of it I'm thinking of that from the perspective of somebody who uses cameras professionally. I'm thinking like, how would anybody in their right mind buy a DSLR these days? You know, blah blah blah. But then, of course, you know, if you're a consumer, it's different, right? It's a different thing. You're looking at different things. You're not necessarily interested in. You don't necessarily care whether it's mirrorless or not. You know, so that's fair enough. But still, I'm surprised it's not more than, you know, than 50%. But anyway, that's where we are in 2019. So this may actually be very different in 2020. You know,
true.
So total it actually makes up 46% of the total market. So if you then break down the mirrorless sales between those main manufacturers, something really interesting comes to light. Because here, our top 5 look very different. In fact, the number one mirrorless manufacturer happens to be Sony with 1.65 million cameras sold.
Really?
So
okay.
Out of the practically all of the Sony cameras are mirrorless.
Yeah.
Right? Practically all of them. So they've sold more mirrorless cameras than Canon, who's more than 4 times ahead of them in total camera sales. And well, let's walk through that top 5, shall we? So Sony sold 1.65 million. That's, you know, that's about that's almost half of all mirrorless cameras sold were Sony's.
It's amazing.
That's incredible.
That's amazing.
So they've really, you know, as much as Canon seems to be like the big leader in the camera market, like if you just look at mirrorless, like Sony have destroyed the big camera manufacturers. Because Canon follows up with 940,000. So Sony have sold nearly twice as many mirrorless cameras as Canon. That must be depressing when you work for Canon.
Wow.
And it just shows you how bad news it is when you're so behind in adopting new technology like that.
The thing is, I'm sure they would have already known these numbers ages ago, right? And
well, this is, of course, you know, again, we're talking about 2019 numbers, so this is like before the RS and before the R5 and all that, and so, you know, Canon have taken this opportunity, at least in 2020, to really come out with some banging new cameras.
And I do wonder how all this overheating nonsense that's been going on for the last few months, you know, these numbers now suggest that wasn't intentional. You know, we've kind of half joked in the past that they may have deliberately done this for the news and the talk and the hype and all of that.
Well, and it's, you know, they ain't any worse publicity than bad publicity, as they always say, right? This may well be, maybe that's a strategy, maybe not, who knows. But anyway, so I mean, that's, you know, that in itself, if you just look at that, that's interesting. So Sony are there with 1.65 million, followed by Canon with 940,000. Followed by number 3, Fujifilm.
Hey,
Fujifilm, 500,000. That's all of them. All of the Fuji cameras with interchangeable lenses are mirrorless. Awesome. Fuji, full-on adopter of mirrorless technology. Love them, love them, love them. Right. And that's followed by, drum roll, fourth place. In fourth place we have Olympus.
Well done, Nikon.
What? Like Olympus, the company that practically sold off the imaging division, are still ahead of Nikon.
Oh my God. That's brilliant.
Oh man. That is like...
What are they doing?
That's so frustrating.
Give us the numbers. How far behind are Nikon?
So Fujifilm, you know, they've basically shipped 500,000 cameras in total. They're all mirrorless. Yeah, done. Olympus are behind them with 330,000. That's actually, again, all of the ones that have shipped, and that's 330,000 mirrorless cameras. Awesome. Nikon 280,000. So if you think about it proportionally, right? So Nikon, out of the 1.73 million cameras with interchangeable lenses that they have shipped in total, they've managed to do 280,000 mirrorless ones.
So which camp does their hybrid fall under? The I
think that came out. I don't think that's included in that.
That's not included in that.
Yeah.
But sorry, this is only including bodies which were released in 2019.
Well, no, this is basically all camera. I'm guessing that includes all camera bodies released up to, or sold and released up to. So I mean, I guess it would count, like, for instance, if somebody bought a D5500 or something like that, or 5600, whatever the latest thing is, and that would have been a body that was probably like released in 2018 or whatever, and then sold in 2019. So with the D780, the Nikon D780, which is a sort of hybrid, somewhere between, it's a DSLR, but then when you use it in live view, it uses all the Z6's video technology in there. So, by all accounts, it's decent. It's really an awesome camera, in its own right. And never blame the tools, sort of thing. But of course, it still has, DSLR technology in it, which, it seems quite backwards in a way to release a camera like that. But then there is an argument to say that it kind of makes sense, because you still have so many Nikon users with so many Nikon f-mount lenses that it makes sense to bring out a camera where people don't have to replace all their lenses.
Yeah.
Because that's really where the money is. I mean, this is really the one thing that's keeping me from changing system, is the fact that I've got so much money locked up in all of these lenses. That's and of course, if I were to sell them now, I wouldn't really get a super awesome return on them, and I would lose a lot of money, and I wouldn't be able to replace that. So let's say, for argument's sake, if I sold all of my Nikon gear and I'd moved over to Sony, let's say, or Canon or whatever, then I would have to still pour in so much money that it's the cost benefit equation that's probably not necessarily stacking up at this point. It's a consideration. It's just like you were saying, you're talking about Sony earlier. It's it's a consideration. I don't know if I would necessarily switch to Sony. I might.
So not switching to Sony. Sony might not make sense for you, given that you're primarily a photographer. But for me, that's Canon's piqued my interest this year, but it wasn't quite enough. But if the news, if the rumors are to be true about the new Sony coming out the start of next year, that's a serious consideration for me now.
Yeah.
It's just, but it is going to be damn expensive to change, because I won't. The body is going to probably be in the £3,500 kind of range. That's not cheap, and their lenses, as we've talked about between us before, Sony lenses are more expensive. But if their market share continues to go up the way that it's going up, perhaps those will start to become slightly cheaper. But I doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, to be brutally honest, of course, I think the truth of it is that, I mean, personally, I think, as a photographer, predominantly as a stills photographer, I could probably make this work with any brand camera.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? It's like nowadays, the differences are so marginal.
Yeah.
That you should really shoot any commercial shoot with just about any camera these days. I don't think there's that much in it. Sometimes it's really just down to which system you're used to, and for instance, like simple things like, the camera menus and stuff. If that's, sometimes that's, if you're really familiar with a particular type of menu system, then it might just make your workflow easier, or whatever. So, I do think that there really isn't that much in it. And it's just really what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to, ultimately. And I know that, because of the type of shoots that I do, there's the particular lens choices that are necessary for that. And so I've always, unfortunately in a way, I've always bought lenses specific for a specific purpose. And I use pretty much all of my lenses, which kind of means that really, if I wanted to carry on doing exactly what I'm doing in the way that I'm doing it, I would have to really replace them, if I were to switch system. So I'll really have to replace them like for like, which would be extremely expensive.
Yeah.
Extremely expensive. And that's where that's the crux of the matter for me, is that I don't really feel like I want to do that at this point.
Yeah.
And even if I sold all of my Nikon gear and all my lenses and everything else, given depreciation and whatever, it would still mean I would have to pour a ton of money into that.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, 500 quid for a Fuji X100V sounds quite palatable when I'm thinking of it that way.
Yeah.
Or it could be a total waste of money. Who knows? But it's one of these things. So I think it's on the cards in the next couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, you will, when you eventually switch, you will switch to mirrorless.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
There's no way back.
So if you were to move to, Nikon will probably have another one out by then.
Yeah.
Right?
So my secret hope is that Nikon kind of my hope is that they're doing what they kind of did with the D850 when that first came out some years ago, right? Where people were like hopping on about how Nikon hasn't, brought out anything, hasn't really, improved on there. Like D750, D810 had been out for a while, blah, 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 blah. And Canon was overtaking them with the 5 Mark IV or whatever it was at the time. I can't remember exactly. But and then of course, then Nikon came out with the D850, and what a killer camera that was at the time. And still is an awesome camera.
And actually, that's probably a good point to say. Although we are talking about potentially switching systems and all of this kind of stuff, that's not to say that the cameras we're using right now or any other cameras are actually no good at what it is. That's not the case in the slightest.
No, I mean, this is like really where, you're really like nitpicking, I think.
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember, do you remember when we were talking to Daniel Akeley in episode 2?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's very early. And, we were talking about he was talking about the fact that, he hadn't like replaced his bodies in a while, and he was thinking about it. But of course, fact of the matter is, it's like, it's not that 10 years ago or something, people weren't able to take great photos. Because they totally were, It's just nowadays, there is technology around that makes your life a lot easier. Like iFocus, I'm thinking, for portrait or headshot photography, for instance, that's a big thing. It could just really make the difference between, even for concert photography, like it could make the difference between, your, 6 shots out of 10 being in focus, or 10 shots out of 10 being, or 9 shots out of 10 being in focus. And so you might end up actually being able to create more usable imagery, and video, of course, is a big thing, because even if you compare, the video specs in cameras that are 3 years old to the cameras that are coming out now, I mean, it's like night and day, So, and of course, what that allows you to do, just simple 4K, for example, when you can think, well, but most of the time, why would you? Most of the time, there isn't really even a need to shoot in 4K, because most people watch stuff in 1080. But of course, if you do shoot in 4K, there are certain advantages that make your life easier, and it's usually a matter of how many choices you have in, in editing afterwards in post production. Like you can zoom in, and you can create different looking shots from one base shot and all the rest of it, and you can downsample it and ends up looking better and crisper and all the rest of it. So there are advantages in following the latest technology in these sort of things. It's always this balance between, is it worth the financial outlay?
Yeah.
and it's like if I think about, I very recently replaced my old 2012 MacBook Pro, right? Which is worth probably nothing these days. Like I think like 100 quid or whatever it's worth now, But and buying a new iMac is, there's some serious money you have to lay down for that, and that's it's not an easy choice to make. When you have hungry mouths to feed and a hungry dog, all the rest of it. But it's what you gain. That's the important part, and then it's evaluating whether that's worth it for you or not. Like for me, there was simple things that I didn't really think about in advance, and of course, it's great to have a 5K screen and all that is awesome. But there's simple things like the fact that I sit in a different way now, and I don't have pains in the back of my neck anymore because I'm not looking down. That's worth it to me. I have a better posture. The screen is bigger. I can actually place more things on the screen. I don't have to strain my eyes as much because the screen is much better. It has a higher resolution, all the rest of it. That's worth it to me. Time-saving things like the fact that it's got 10 cores or whatever, and it really cuts down on video rendering time. That's worth it to me.
Yeah,
all of that stuff's worth it to me, and it's worth the investment because it actually does make my life easier.
Yeah, you add all this up over the course of a year, and it's significant.
Exactly.
There's none of that. God, just you don't know if it's going to render correctly or
not. Yeah. And then what if you watch it back and it's just been rendering for several hours, and then you watch it back and you go, oh shoot, that transition is rubbish. I have to do it again.
Yeah.
It's a real it's just the thing of like waking up in the morning and not feeling somebody's like hit you in the back of the neck with a baseball bat type of feeling. It's it's funny, but it's kind of it's true. It really makes a big difference. So that's that's it. But financial commitments.
Yeah, man.
And there's a little bit of this sort of nostalgic sentiment in there as well, because my dad used to shoot Nikon. I've shot Nikon ever since, well, with the exception of the very first camera maybe that I had, but I've shot Nikon cameras for a long time. There's a certain affinity you have for the brand.
Yeah.
There's history, there's real history attached to Nikon, just like there's to Canon, of course. But I would just be really sad having to switch to a different brand.
I've no doubt, but
so,
they've certainly got to pick up their game in the next year or two, or I think they will lose you.
And if they're losing me, then it's bad news. That's bad news bears.
Yeah.
Because, that's like people have been with the brand. And I know that's been happening over the last few years. Lots of people left or changed from Nikon and Canon to Sony. And that's, of course, how Sony managed to build up their user base so dramatically.
Yeah.
And very recently, you've seen people leave Sony back to Canon because Canon have really upped their game, And Nikon, I actually think they've made a good start with the Z6, especially the Z6 and also the Z7, in the sense that they've really, really beefed up the video game in those. Nikon have always been known for the stills camera people. Yeah. It's always been known that if you're doing video, then Nikon is not your thing. Like stay away from that because autofocus is crap, and it's just not on par with Canon. Canon quite some time ago realized that actually they had to kind of invest into the video capabilities of their cameras, and they've done a really good job. In that, and Nikon have and of course Canon also have this whole video division almost, with the C series, the C100, C200, and all that, all those video cameras. So they had an advantage there, but Nikon have been so far behind that they really needed to come around swinging, and I think they did with the Z6. But they've also made a lot of mistakes, like and it's just a stupid discussion.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
The single,
is it going to involve a SD card?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the single camera slot thing. The fact that you can't get a battery grip is like stupid. That is just plain stupid. You know, like you can't like who thought about this? You know.
No, that's crazy. I've four things as well. I know you don't really use one, but I can shoot without them.
But if I used my camera more for video, then I would, without a shadow of a doubt,
right.
Use a better grip, no doubt. It makes perfect sense, and so not to be able to connect one, it's just beggars belief, So anyway, there's some things that were done really good. There were some serious things that were left out, and I know there's some rumors that Nikon will be coming out with an updated version of the Z6 and the Z7. It's sort of what do you call it, like an interim upgrade or something like that.
Okay, yeah, it's a bit like a iPhone 11 and an iPhone 11s.
Yes, exactly. Right? Yeah. And I think there's supposed to be called something like that.
Yeah, there we go.
6S or whatever. And apparently, these cameras are now kind of rectifying some of those mistakes. Like apparently they now have dual car slots, and apparently now you can get a better grip for them and whatever. But it's still the same sensor, same autofocus system, I believe, and nothing's changed there. So
it almost begs the question: is there any point in them doing that right now, or should they be focusing on getting more cameras out that are up to speed with, or as good as what Canon and Sony are doing right now?
Well, this is what I'm saying. As I'm secretly hoping that they're like, beavering away somewhere in the Nikon bat cave, and they're coming out with this mirrorless version of a D850 that will just slam it out of the ballpark. That's what I'm hoping secretly. But I'm becoming less and less hopeful.
Mm-hmm. Me too. Which is, I hope we're wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because apart from everything else, I would hate to see yet another after Olympus, big camera brand disappear.
It's bad for consumers.
Well, it's bad for consumers, but it's just like, it's one of these things, you just don't want.
No, you don't.
It's like some car brands. I mean, sometimes these, big, full of tradition, like, car brands disappear. And you kind of go, huh?
Yeah.
Like, that's not, like, I don't know.
You don't want that. You don't. But purely from a consumer perspective, it can't be good.
No.
Reducing competition like that from a major player is just...
That's it. But I'm still not saying...
Never ends well.
I'm still not saying go out and buy an Olympus.
No.
I'm still not saying that.
No.
So you will not hear me say that on this show. This is a promise. Anyway, so enough about Nikon's misgivings.
Yes.
I actually have some positive news as well.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Yeah. All right. This is the part where we come to the fun news, because finally, after weeks of sort of a void in the fun photography news, right? Mm-hmm. There's a couple of things that I've come across that really made me chuckle, which is always good news.
Shoot.
So literally, shoot. Now, Estee Lauder, it's been reported.
Yes, my bathroom's full of that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. They've reportedly paid NASA $128,000 for a photo shoot on the International Space Station.
Okay, I immediately have two questions.
What's that?
One, why?
Why? Okay.
And why so little? That doesn't seem like enough money.
Yeah, okay, well, it's that's true. Although $128,000 is a lot of money, obviously, for some of us. You could buy at least 40,000 R5s with that. But here you go.
And they'd all overheat.
Well, they'd all overheat, yeah. You could probably generate enough heat to launch off the planet and fly.
Yeah, but you just start one after the other as each one overheats after 30 seconds.
But so what's happened was, so Estee Lauder basically have come up with the idea of sending some of their, so they're sending 10 bottles of their advanced night repair skin serum up to the ISS. So that in itself costs a ton of money, obviously, because it's weight and it's expensive. And they're launching that from Virginia to the ISS. And I think, where are we now? Well, if you're listening to this on Thursday, it's on its way. It should be there on Saturday, something like that. So they're basically bringing, they're transporting 10 of these bottles up to the ISS, and then they're getting the astronauts, or they're instructing the astronauts to do this photo shoot in what's called the Copular module, which is this like sweeping panoramic views.
Okay.
Yeah. Of Earth and space and all that. So they're instructing the astronauts to conduct the photo shoot up there. And so NASA charges a professional fee for the astronauts' time.
Mm-hmm.
And so an hour of an astronaut's time is charged at $17,500.
I wonder how much of that the astronaut sees.
That must be, well, probably none. But there must be the highest hourly rate for any photographer ever in the history.
It's impressive.
That's really quite impressive, isn't it? So I thought that was funny. So the ultimate use of those images is social media, like Instagram and everything else. And you kind of think, why not just Photoshop it in?
Absolutely.
They could have even replaced the sky.
Not yet.
Not yet, right. But, so interesting thing. Now, that leads me on to the other thing, and that is, of course, NASA have sort of opened up the ISS, the International Space Station, obviously now for like product-related shoots, but also for space tourism.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, okay, so is it now just a matter of time until we see tourists fly to the International Space Station?
Which camera would you take if you went? Would you take the Fuji?
No. Well, no. No, traditionally you'd have to take a Nikon because Nikons are traditionally used by NASA. They were used on the moon, I believe, or whatever. I can't remember, but yeah, I know that they run a whole bunch of Nikons up at the space station. So it would have to be a Nikon.
Okay.
So, yeah, for sure.
Fair enough.
But talking about the International Space Station, so it turns out that none other than Tom Cruise is going to shoot a film inside of the International Space Station.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's a first, but that's clearly a first.
That totally is a first.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
well, here's a question for you then. Will it be cheaper to send him up because he's so short?
And was that a consideration? Yeah. It's like, oh, we need a short actor. He needs to be short, but yeah. So he's going up there with the help of Elon Musk, who's basically sending him up in one of his SpaceX rockets.
Well, okay.
Question I have: are they going to leave him up there?
Maybe, yeah.
So,
what is that going to cost to send him up, and any other actors that may be involved, and camera crew, and
well, no, I think as
I'm
far
sure they only have 2 crew.
Yeah, as far as I understand, is that he's going up there, I think, with Doug Liman, who's the director.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have thought that most likely they're only going to be shooting those 2 people up, but who knows? I mean, it's nowadays, of course, camera technology is such that you really don't need big production cameras potentially. No. Maybe they're taking a bunch of A9s. Who knows?
Quite possible.
But yeah, so the plan, I think, is to get them up there in the Crew Dragon, in the Dragon capsule thing, and then they shoot at least segments of the film up there. So that would definitely be a first. I mean, it's kind of a cool thought, but the question still remains: why Tom Cruise?
Why Tom Cruise? Why actually go there?
Well, I mean, he's like, I can see that because he's always like trying to sort of reach for the extremes, whether that's like hanging on the outside of a plane or whatever else, doing extreme stunts and breaking his foot and, all of that kind of jazz. So I can kind of see how that would be attractive to him. And of course, it would be an absolute first. Like no actor has done that before. When actors have probably hung on the side of aeroplanes and jumped out of buildings and all that kind of jazz. But like actually go into space and actually going to the International Space Station, all that kind of stuff. That's a whole other level.
Yeah.
So I think, that would probably be deserving of an Oscar just for daring. I think
maybe that's why he's doing it.
Can you imagine if they get him to do like a spacewalk and then, they lose him out in space? Like, oh shit. Damn it. Guys, Houston, we've just lost Tom Cruise.
It was difficult to see.
No more Mission Impossible movies. Woohoo!
Thank God.
But so here's another, as part of the same bit of news, this is an interesting thing, because they're currently in the process of filming the latest installment of Mission Impossible, which is
are they? There is another one, is there?
Yeah, I mean, it's was it film number 7 or something?
Oh, I don't know.
But apparently, of course, because of the whole coronavirus pandemic and stuff, lots of film productions have shut down.
Yeah.
Or were delayed or whatever because of it. But apparently, he has personally paid for cast and crew to live on cruise ships.
Are these Tom Cruise
ships? Cruise ships, yeah. But yes, it appears as though he's been paying out of his own pocket. He's paying for cast and crew to live on cruise ships, so that they can continue filming.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean that in itself is, unless he's got a stake in a production company, which he probably has,
or a cruise ship.
So he would have, yeah. Well,
a Tom Cruise ship.
I mean, I guess any ship he owned would be a cruise ship, wouldn't it?
Amazing.
Yeah. I wonder whether he drives with cruise control. Do you think that's like a recurring joke every time he gets in the car? Hey, Dad!
Yeah. Can you put Tom Cruise control on?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, interesting thing. I thought that was, that was quite impressive.
Yeah, it's a nice gesture.
Yeah. So, Tom Cruise, Elon Musk, a marriage made in heaven.
Yeah,
I suppose.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
So,
well, there we go.
Nuts.
Indeed.
So yeah, that's all I've got for this week's photography bulletin.
That brings us to the close of episode 23.
Episode 23.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
In the can, as
in the
I
can.
say.
Bagged.
Yeah. Don't listen to it in the can, but I mean you could.
You could.
Yeah, you could.
You could.
Yeah, in fact, do listen to it on the can because that gets our viewership up. We still haven't found out who that listener in Maryville, Tennessee is.
No.
So if you are out there and you're listening, you've made it through to the end of the show. First of all, congratulations, and secondly, please email us at camera or send us a Facebook message or something. Anyway, you can email us on camerashakepodcast@gmail.com, or of course, if you are so inclined and you're not hanging out on MySpace anymore, you've made it to Facebook, then come and visit us on facebook.com/Camerashake Podcast. That'd be awesome. We always put fun and entertaining posts on there.
Very good. Oh,
yeah,
that's nice wordplay.
I know.
Well done.
Anyway, so that's it from us. Episode 23.
Indeed. See you next time.
See you next time in episode 24.